Evening, ladies and gents. How you doing? Here across the pond, we're only a month away from election day. So, this being 2024, the powers that be have completely lost their mind. And the rhetoric you're seeing on television, it's so bad they make the Liberal Democrats in the UK look sane. Or even David Lammy, who thinks you can, grow a cervix somehow. Anyway, this video came from End Wokeness, and it's definitely worth a look because the fact that they'll put a woman on television when she clearly couldn't win a debate against a bucket of snot is truly mind-blowing to me. I love slagging off the BBC. I almost do it professionally at this point, but even the BBC wouldn't show this level of hyperbole, delusional hyperbole, to the general public because they know it would make them look mentally deficient. It does make you think though, because people like me have been jokingly calling Trump the God Emperor of mankind, and if this lady was correct, it would be a very apt name because he'd be about to commit Exterminatus on a planetary level. Here it is, End Wokeness. CNN doubles down on the rhetoric. Trump will absolutely try to exterminate groups of people with different genes. It was that daft. I assume the person who wrote the tweet was, trying to be funny, exaggerating wildly just to make a point. But no, turns out the raving lunatic on the left thinks saying such things to a mainstream audience makes Trump look bad and not the gibbering idiot who's repeating such things.
That we have long known that Donald Trump has revered the Nazis. He has revered Hitler. He's read his book. He used to say he had it on his nightstand.
We've long known this, yeah. Those of you that inhabit the real planet Earth and not the fictional one are aware that the very fine people hoax was exactly that. And he specifically said, I am not talking about the white nationalists. That is the only instance I can think of where he mentioned the one bollocked Austrian. It's literally the only instance I can think of, and he was debunking them and saying he didn't agree with their ideology. So, and as for the rest of it, we know he's got his flaws. I don't think he's a big reader. Doesn't strike me as being a big reader. He might pick up the paper for 20 minutes a day, but the idea that he sits there reading literature written by the Germanic midget with a stupid mustache is absolutely preposterous. And if you thought that was daft, well, it gets even worse.
Donald Trump has had a very sinister philosophy, wanting to be a dictator, absolutely dividing people up based on who they are, based on factors about them that have to do with their race and their gender, etc. And when he uses language like this, I don't think that it's a Freudian slip. I think that the danger of a Donald Trump is that he would absolutely try to exterminate an entire group of people because he thinks that their genes are somehow different than his and faulty.
And the two guys there, you see them trying to nod sagely like she's making a good point. One of them went, yeah, try to exterminate people. Like he's Davros and he's going to send the Daleks out. Are they not aware that he was president for 4 years? That this is the point I've made many times about the raving lunatics that tried to call him a dictator. He was the president for 4 years and nothing weird happened. It was almost boringly sedate when the Orange Oracle was the president. He made friends with that little fat knacker in North Korea. There was no new conflict. He even settled things down in Israel and Palestine, or with the Syrians, walked back from the brink there when everybody else wanted it to kick off. And David Cameron was like, yeah, let's have another war. That's a good idea. Turns out Trumpy was the calm one, which I didn't see that coming 10 miles away. And he even, let's just pick a tepid dictator, someone like Pinochet. He didn't round up and murder thousands of people on an industrial scale. He merely vanished a few journalists and activist types, didn't he? Trump didn't even exterminate the ginger comedian who posed on front of national magazines with his head in her hand, his severed bloody head. And all he did was laugh and said, silly mare. And the next thing, she's crying on television going, oh, he's destroyed me. So my question to anybody who claims that you're dealing with a fascist or an authoritarian or a dictator is, what did he do that was fascist or authoritarian or even remotely in the realms of dictatorship when he was actually running the country for 4 years. And if this lady thinks he's going to start up industrial scale death camps, and because he's American, you know, they'd be much better organised than any trifling death camps the likes of Pol Pot would come up with, the Donald would get some nice, methodically crafted, well-maintained, Tesla-style death camps. But he didn't, did he? He didn't. It was almost boring when he was the president. He just said stuff and stopped invading people. So, like I've said, you don't really need to be a political savant these days to win the argument. You just need to let them talk. There's no rebuttal required. If you've got a fully functioning brain and an IQ above room temperature, when you see something like that, no part of you goes, oh, that was an excellent point. Well presented, Democrat strategist lady. No, you don't. You go, hang on, he was the president for 4 years and he didn't start putting thousands of people in the showers with some Cyclone B, did he? But you just can't help the young. Gen Z you can't help, because look at this story from the BBC. We're barely scraping by. Gen Z says money matters in the US election. Oh, money matters, does it? So are you going to vote for the person who made sure that you had more money then? Yeah? Yeah? No. Seems too logical, that, doesn't it? The US presidential election is just weeks away, and one essential voting bloc is getting a lot of attention from both parties, young voters. But its economic woes, from inflation to housing, could drive them to the polls. It's Isabella Morris's first presidential election, and the 21-year-old mum is listening closely to what both candidates have to say. Recently married with a 2-year-old, Isabella works part-time to supplement her husband's income. She stays at home with her child while her family rent a small one-bedroomed apartment. The plan seemed solid. 2 incomes, no mortgage, but it's not enough. Yeah, so you almost pity her. Must be rough, working like that. 2 jobs, but you've got no savings, you're not buying any investments or anything like that. You could almost feel sorry for her. And then you get to the bottom of the story. Kamala Harris now holds a 31-point lead over Trump among likely voters aged 18 to 29, according to the Harvard Institute of Politics poll released in late September. So what are you supposed to do with that? If you're a young person and you look out the window today and say to yourself, I'm definitely better off now than I was 4 years ago when the Orange Oracle was in charge and taxes were lower and inflation was lower and groceries were lower and petrol was lower and clothes were lower. I can't think of anything that was higher when Trump was in charge. Possibly meth and smack, because he was actually enforcing the border. You know, because when there's a drought on and there's less drugs, they go up in price. That's the only thing I can think of that's going to be cheaper now than it was then. And might I suggest, doing crystal meth is probably not good for your job prospects, is it? So these people are raving lunatics. It's hard to have sympathy for the young. And I know that makes me sound like a cantankerous old boomer, but it's hard to have sympathy for the young when they just keep voting for abject stupidity. To close, it makes me think of the type of message that Jordan Peterson sends out, isn't it? You should worry about getting your room in order. If you're worried about never owning a home and not having any disposable income and not being able to start a family, you should be like a single issue voter. Should be who's going to help you out economically the most. But instead, as it says in this story, in the 2020 election, COVID-19, racism and healthcare outranked the economy as the main issue driving young voters to the polls. So what do you do with that? Do you want to own a house and have a family and have disposable income and have investments? Well, I'd like to have that, but you know what's more important? Bending the government's will towards eradicating a form of prejudice that has existed since time immemorial and has always afflicted humanity and always will. And even though now it's demonstrably less of a problem than it was 30 years ago, and we've made real progress, and we've just had a black man in charge of the free world for the last 8 years, I think I'm going to worry more about that intractable problem than I am about my own bank account and feeding me kids. So, sorry, not sorry. If you're under the age of 30 and you're going to vote for old footface there, Kamala Pork Pie Harris, you deserve everything you get. Go and vote for her, and I hope you end up living in a shed in your mum and dad's back garden till you're 60. All right? Have a good time. Enjoy yourself. Sit there eating your pot noodles and drinking rain, nourished properly by the knowledge that you voted to try and end prejudice. Like that's possible. Yeah, you're welcome. Enjoy yourselves, lads. All right? But I reserve the right to constantly mock you about it. Okay? And yeah, let me know what you think about that CNN clip. I've never seen the like. I've never seen anyone say anything that stupid. In fact, no, I have once. The only time I've ever heard anyone say something almost as stupid was when Lambtron said this.
By implication, you're comparing the ERG to the Nazi Party, or at least to the South African racists. Now, whatever you think about the ERG, that was an unacceptable comparison, wasn't it?
Andrew, I would say that wasn't strong enough.
Yeah, I almost forgot about that. So I'll get down off my high horse. I'll get down off my high horse. Definitely. They are no better in the UK, are they? Because at least that plank on CNN was just a random strategist. This guy's now in the front bench, walking around with his trainers on, attending dignitaries and world meetings. I'll hold my hands up. The UK is even dafter than the United States, because that human sausage is in a position of power and authority in the United Kingdom. But that's just what I think. If you think both David and that lady on CNN are saying perfectly reasonable and logical things, please let me know in the comments so I can have you sectioned by medical professionals, encased in a straitjacket and being spoon-fed mashed banana for the rest of your life because you don't have a brain that allows you to operate in the modern world. All right? That's it for the day, ladies and gents. I hope you enjoyed it. I know US politics is less interesting to 80% of my audience for some reason. But seriously, if you're not interested in the US presidential election, you should be. Because where they lead, we follow. All right? Thanks for tuning in. See you all tomorrow. Toodle pip. Cheers.